Welcome, anime fans and the anime curious, to Where There's a Weeb, There's a Way, a podcast series in which a seasoned otaku and a newbie attempt to put together an anime canon. We're going to be taking a look at some of the most influential shows and films, along with some more modern curiosities to help break a newcomer into the medium. We're your hosts, Grace and Chris.
And in this week's episode, we're going to travel to the far-flung future of 2019. We're going to travel to Neo Tokyo in an episode where we're going to talk about seminal 80s anime classic Akira. So, Akira, immediate impressions of the film.
I feel like my immediate reaction was just, what?
Yeah, I think that's probably most people's reaction to first seeing Akira. Akira is like the Rosetta Stone of modern anime, I would argue. It's the oldest thing that we've seen so far as part of this podcast. It's not the oldest anime that you've seen, though. The oldest one is probably Nausicaa, which is like... If it was like whatever the predecessor to the Rosetta Stone was, that's Nausicaa. Akira is like... I think this analogy's gone too far, but basically what I'm trying to say is that Akira is a massively influential film, probably one of the most important works of anime in the history of film. It's also one of the most important pieces of just animation and filmmaking in general, really. So the film was released in 1988, and it's like a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk action-adventure film directed by Katsuhiro Otomo in an adaptation of his own manga series. So the director was actually the writer and artist of the 7-volume manga series, which kind of were released in Weekly Young magazine. In a sort of different sort of magazine. It's not really shonen. It's called a seinen, which is more marketed towards young adults, basically. So it's a bit more like mature, different territory to a lot of the shonen stuff we've been doing. So Akira is an example of a seinen series. So the manga was published in Weekly Young magazine between 1982 and 1990. And lasted for 6 tankobon volumes. If you don't know what those are, tankobon are basically the individual volumes of manga, which are released when a series has been serialised. They'll throw a bunch of chapters together in a book and call it volume 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And the Akira volumes are pretty infamous. I remember going into like a Borders, like when Borders was open, into the manga section, and I really always wanted to buy the Akira manga, but they were literally the size of telephone books, so they were like really expensive.
Your mum wouldn't let you bring that home?
No, my monthly manga buying budget couldn't stretch that far. But Akira the manga is also pretty famous in that it's one of the first ever mangas to be translated completely into English.
Oh, right.
In the United States, it was actually released by Marvel Comics via the name Epic Comics. So it was one of the first series to really kind of break into the realms of manga and anime. So the Akira is not only hugely influential in the realms of anime, it's also hugely influential in the realm of manga as well. It's a huge work, which I've actually never read, and I do want to rectify that at some point in my life, where I do want to read the Akira manga, but we're here today to talk about the film version, which was released in 1988. So I suppose a few factoids about Akira the film. It was, at the time, the most expensive anime film ever made, costing 700 million Japanese yen, which is about $5.5 million, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering that probably when Akira was made, they were assuming that only people in Japan were ever going to watch this film. That's a massive budget, and in fact, it was the most expensive anime film of all time until the following year's Kiki's Delivery Service, which, believe it or not, was the most expensive anime film ever made at that point.
Wow, okay. I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's great, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, both Katsuhiro Otomo and Hayao Miyazaki were obviously in the late 80s were really pushing like the detail of their animation to the extreme. Kiki's Delivery Service. It's such an innocent film. And it's not a sort of film which you kind of imagine having the same sort of detailed animation as something like Akira. But if we were to watch Kiki's Delivery Service now, you'd probably see now that actually there is a bit of cross-relation between Akira and Kiki's Delivery Service, of that highly detailed animation style, which is really, really on display in Akira. The animation, even today, is absolutely outstanding, considering the lack of, basically next to no CGI. And you think about the amount of detail that went into making this film, it's just incredible. So so it was the most expensive anime film ever made at the time. It's often regarded as being one of the greatest animated films, or the greatest science fiction films, hugely influential in the realm of Japanese animation. It became a bit of a cult classic when it was brought over to the United States. The theatrical and VHS releases in the United States ended up making $80 million, so it was a pretty big cult hit as well. And it just has had such a massive influence since then on animation, comics, film, music, television, video games. This really is, for so many people and so many things that we like in particular, is the cornerstone of so many different genres and shows and pieces of work that we're all incredibly fond of. So it was a pretty insane project at the time to basically condense what basically would be about 2,000 pages worth of manga into a 2-hour film. The film was also a little bit unusual in that they actually recorded the dialogue first.
Oh, okay.
Which, believe it or not, that really wasn't much of a common thing back in animation. They would generally do the animation first, and then the voice actors would come in and dub over it.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, even amongst Disney stuff, it was quite a rare thing, because then with them recording the voices first, then the artists could match the lip movement that the actors were doing to again give that hugely detailed look to the film. And that kind of, as I said, that high attention to detail. So I said it was a massive project, huge undertaking for the director, who was also working on the manga at the same time. And lots of people who were involved in the making of Akira would go on to even bigger things. So you've got key animators who would go on to work for Studio Ghibli and several other artists. So Akira as a film comes with a huge amount of legacy. It's a massively important film in the history of anime and manga and just Japanese film in general. But we're here today to talk about how it works for someone who is completely new to anime, because for so many people back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, this would have been their first exposure to anime. I would argue for hundreds of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. So, Grace, what did you think of Akira?
I liked it. It is really, really unapologetically weird.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I like, and I do admire that. But I was kind of left at the end going, what happened?
Yeah, that's. I remember when I first got this film. I remember the DVD packaging. It was in a really unusual DVD box set. It was Akira, but it came with 2 DVDs. I think I had like 2 dubs of the film or something. It was released through Manga Entertainment, and I think I probably got rid of it a long time ago. But yeah, I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, what on earth am I watching, and why is this as good as people say it is? And my approach to Akira is basically, you know, I watch it every 4 or 5 years or so, and I understand it a little bit more, and I appreciate it a little bit more, and then I'm left scratching my head at the end, and then I'll come back in another several years and I'll understand another element of it. So I feel like I'm slowly getting there with Akira, but I totally get the alienation that that you can feel, because it is balls to the wall insane. Like, it's pretty uncompromising.
Should we talk a bit about the plot?
Yeah, sure. I'll certainly give it a go, because I have been trying to put this together for years now. But basically, yeah. So the film is set in 2019, following.
Wow.
Following.
So far away.
I know. Yeah. Well, do you remember that huge, like, almost like nuclear explosion that happened in Tokyo, and World War III and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the film is basically set in 2019 in Neo Tokyo. Basically, in the late 80s, there was a massive explosion, almost as in like an A-bomb, which basically destroyed the old Tokyo, and we restart the film basically in a couple decades later. Tokyo has been rebuilt. It's now called Neo Tokyo, and it's fallen into a city that is corrupt, that is plagued by corruption, anti-government protests, terrorism, gang violence. And in and amongst this, we're introduced to our 2 main characters who are part of a biker gang, so a couple school kids and their friends. One is called
Well, should I try and
go on,
come up with these names? So one is called Tetsuo.
Yeah, Tetsuo.
And the other is Kaneda, like the country.
Like the country.
Like the country. That's how I remembered his name.
Yeah. So Kaneda is kind of like the would-be leader of the biker gang, and Tetsuo is kind of like his hapless aide. You know, he wants to be like Kaneda, kind of aspires to be, you know, that strong, that cool, basically. So Tetsuo is basically always in kind of the shadows, and yeah, they're a biker gang. And the opening of the film, which is probably either my favourite or my second favourite section of the film, my other one being the stuff that happens in the Olympic Stadium at the end. But the opening basically picks up with Kaneda and Tetsuo and other members of the biker gang basically chasing after and trying to kill a rival gang. They're called like they're like the clowns or something. And they're chasing after them through Neo Tokyo, which this is the film's opportunity to let you start to basically breathe in the world that you're going to inhabit for the next 2 hours. You know, I'm always really into stories where the setting can kind of become a character unto itself, and Neo Tokyo, I think, is like the classic example of that. You know, if you want post-apocalyptic city, Neo Tokyo is like it is basically that. It is the template. When we're watching Gurren Lagann in the second half of the series, where it's set in the future city, like, I got such big Akira vibes. Like, I got no doubt with the way they were doing the drive-by scenes where the buildings were moving and stuff to simulate motion. I've got no doubt that was Akira references. So along the way, Tetsuo encounters a strange blue-skinned boy who seems to have weird powers. And yeah, Tetsuo has this slightly odd encounter with this character who's called Takashi, but you find out basically he's escaped from like a government laboratory, and through a series of circumstances, Tetsuo is kidnapped. He's basically taken away by the Japanese army and put into like tests similar to he's basically put through tests and stuff, and he starts to notice changes in his body. He starts developing like powers and stuff, and there's references to a mysterious figure called Akira, who could be a science experiment, could be a god, could be something in between. It's not really made clear. And basically the rest of the film essentially follows as Kaneda desperately tries to find a way of reaching Tetsuo, saving him from the military, and you know, maybe making a better life for themselves. I don't know. It's bold, it's crazy, lots of stuff happens. and it's definitely a lot to take in on a first viewing. All right, so this might be fun. What scene did you find? And I guess we can talk spoilers as well. I mean, because I think we might have to with the films. But what was the scene that you found the weirdest in Akira? Like your number one weirdest scene.
I mean, I don't know if it is actually the weirdest, but I really, really liked the scene where he's in like the military hospital and he starts kind of hallucinating all these toys and seeing them walk across his pillow, and you're kind of like, oh, that's just a hallucination. But then the toys kind of join into like three great big monstrous like teddy bear car, and he fights them through the hospital, and they go into like this nursery part of the hospital, and it's really weird. And that was probably my favorite scene. The other really weird one, of course, would be near the very end of the film where Tetsuo kind of turns into like a giant blob thing.
Yeah, I was. I remember, we got to that scene in the hospital while we were watching it, and you said I can't remember what that scene exactly, but
I think it was a bit later where I said, just when I think this film can't get any weirder, it gets weirder.
But I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, knowing the stuff that happens in the Olympic Stadium is gonna happen, yeah. So Akira is like incredibly uncompromising. You can tell that they're having to squeeze in as many volumes of manga as possible. I don't know how much the Akira film covers. I think I heard somewhere maybe like the first 2 volumes of the manga. Maybe it's a bit more. Maybe they do a bit more of the material. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. Maybe I'll find out one day. But I don't know. I think part of the confusion of the film, that you are literally dropped in the middle of like this kind of grander, bigger story, I actually think kind of works in the film's favour a little bit. You get the sense that you are stepping in halfway through a story, which I think I'm not normally massively into that. I'm a bit of a structured person. But I think in the case of Akira, I don't know, I think it kind of works. It kind of gives this kind of delirious nature to the film where, you have to infer quite a lot and not everything is necessarily made clear, and you have to kind of put the pieces together, which is kind of why I keep on coming back to the film, because I kind of enjoy working out like a little bit more with each subsequent watch. Don't know, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I do think that maybe on a rewatch I would understand more of it, but of course I've only watched it once, so I can only speak to my experience of having watched it once.
Yeah, well, it's not an easy watch, I think. It's a long film as well. Obviously, it's just over 2 hours, and it's incredibly dense stuff. But I think you'll probably agree that even if you weren't necessarily into like the story aspect,
the animation is fantastic.
Yeah, the animation itself is like an absolute treat.
And I do think there are just some fantastic set pieces in it.
Yeah, I'm part of another podcast series called a bit of self-promotion here. It's called The New Draft, in which we rewrite flawed films with interesting concepts and try to make them good. Now, I'd argue that Akira already is good, but I was thinking in my head, how would I rewrite Akira? And I think Akira's only problem, and I think it's a bit of a big problem, is that the opening of the film is, I think, really desperate to kind of get you sucked into this action-packed world, which is fine. But I don't think you really get a strong sense of like Kaneda and Tetsuo's relationship.
Yeah, I would agree.
I kind of wish that like we'd spent a bit more time just a few scenes of them interacting before they go on the motorcycle chase scene, and them just setting up the dynamic between the two. You can infer quite a lot, but you get the impression that Kaneda is like the leader. People follow what he says, and then Tetsuo kind of just trails behind, which makes sense then later on when Tetsuo gets all these powers and he can start doing whatever the hell he wants instead. Like, it's a fine character beat, but I think the film misses a trick a little bit by not establishing who Tetsuo and Kaneda are in a relationship with each other in the first place.
Yeah, I also think if you establish that a bit more, you would care a bit more about like if Kaneda can save Tetsuo from himself.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And there's some slightly like unfortunate things now as well, which I think kind of age the film a little bit. There's a pretty unfortunate scene where Tetsuo's girlfriend has her shirt ripped off.
Yeah, that felt a bit unnecessary.
It's really unnecessary, yeah. Like, it's...
Also, she's only in about 2 or 3 scenes, so it kind of felt like she was maybe in the film just for that to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate thing of kind of like a lot of like the adult like anime from this time period. There's quite a bit of exploitation of women especially like in the 80s anime world, where, you know, the anime which was basically kind of getting popular, at least in the West, was the more adult stuff. You know, again, that classic thing of people assuming that anime is just one sort of thing. You know, to a whole generation of people think Shonen Jump is anime, you know, and that's all anime can be. While for, I'd argue, like an older generation, people think of anime as kind of being the video nasties of the 80s, you know, like your Akiras, your Ninja Scrolls, and your kind of more violent anime, which was the stuff I was getting released and was kind of popular in the West at the time. So it's interesting how it's kind of like shifted, I guess, you know, into what it's like now. But yeah, no, I mean, like the film itself, as I said, has this delirious quality to it, and yeah, kind of moments, unfortunately, like that do kind of stand out. Like a bit of a side, it's very aged in that aspect. You know, it feels like something of the time, which is unfortunate, but I think it only happens for a bit, because I think the other female character in the film
female character gets treated well, I think, and you know, gets to do stuff. Kay, yeah, she's like a revolutionary.
Yeah, he's like a terrorist, basically.
She's a terrorist, but yeah, I quite like her. Yeah, then you got the 3 weird kids.
Oh yeah, I like the 3 weird kids.
I like the 3 weird kids.
Yeah, they've got like again, I can never quite work out what the deal with them is. You know, like on this time, I was like, okay, so what? So they're like genetic experiments to imbue them with like Akira's power? I don't really know. Again, I'm sorry, any manga readers who are listening to this. You know, maybe I'll read a manga and I can have all my questions answered. But you know, hey, that thing is 2,000 pages. That's a big commitment. So yeah, so it's. I quite liked the Colonel on this one as well. What was he called again? Shikishima, Colonel Shikishima. I liked him quite a bit, especially that part where he says like the city's become corrupted by politicians and capitalists, and that was fun, you know. And again, like something else that I kind of picked up on watching this time was how anti-capitalist the film is in general. Like so many of, I think the film does a pretty effective job of showing how, you know, those in power with all the money, you know, are not seeing the problems that are kind of being trickled down to like the lower parts of society. You know, again, it's weird at how much this film, you know, in one aspect it does feel a bit dated with its attitude towards kind of the gender politics, but in regards to other politics, it feels like today, you know, like protests that are happening today around the world, and the way that, you know, again, politicians and late stage capitalism is running rampant, and you know the fact that like even like if we want to use like Japan as an example, Japan still wants to pursue the Olympics, which are happening this year, desperately, even in light of the undisclosed disease, because apparently that affects algorithms and all that. If you mentioned the C word.
Oh right, I didn't know.
yeah. A bunch of YouTubers have talked about it, but apparently it affects algorithms if you mention the C word. But if you listen to this right now, then you'll know what I'm saying. The Japanese government basically kind of wants to keep the Olympics going despite the rise, you know, despite the big V that's happening there. So it's just weird how how the Olympics played a part in this film. Yeah. And again, you know, the politicians in that film want to pursue the Olympics as a status thing, you know, but then ignoring all the rampant societal problems which are happening in this film, and happening on the lowest parts of society. And yeah, Akira really, even though we are in 2021 and we've not quite had a post-apocalyptic event quite like like Akira yet, it can't help but still feel like today, even though we're past it in a way. Like I almost feel like it feels more like now than something like Blade Runner. Well, like Blade Runner, I think, is also set in the same year. I'm fairly certain Blade Runner set in 2019.
Yeah, I think you could be right. Yeah.
Where like I'm really into dystopian fiction, where despite it being a dystopia, society kind of continues as normal. Like in Children of Men, for example, where like there's all this horrible stuff going on, but you know, those with the money are kind of just living their lives as normal, as if like nothing's going on. And Akira's like that, where there's people, you know, still going to their jobs and stuff, businessmen, people wearing the suits, people going out to restaurants and having coffees and drinks and that sort of stuff. But on the outside,
I think it's part of that thing that, you know, the people most affected by like those kind of world disasters are gonna be poor people. Yeah,
definitely. Which I think Akira definitely explores in its throughout its narrative.
Like rich people will be able to pay not to care.
Yeah, basically. So you know, I noticed a lot of that this time as well, which I enjoyed, which I liked. The music's great as well. You know, the music is a really unique style. I mean, I would say absolutely watch it just so you've got like just to get an opinion on it, and just to say that you've seen it, because again, it is so important. And I think like a lot of things, you know, like with important stuff, even if you don't necessarily like the film, I think it's important just to watch an important piece of art and just to say that you've experienced it. It wasn't for me, but I can respect. Yeah,
you might respect it more than you like it.
Yeah, like I feel that way about a lot of like silent cinema, like the Passion of Jean d'Arc, for example, which I can respect as a piece of cinema and how important it was for narrative cinema, but I sure as heck did not enjoy watching it. But I think Akira's a little bit different. Where like I think it's entertaining at the same time. So I mean like a bit of a weird one where like it's a really important film. I think I probably like it a bit better than you.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you've seen it like 4 or 5 times now.
I think this is my 4th time watching it.
So I might like it more the next 3 times I see it.
Maybe, yeah.
I think it's probably a grower.
I like it more and more each time I watch it, and I think that's part of why it's kind of been why it has such a longevity with people. Well, like I think because it is such a dense film and the mythology is so packed. I do think there is an appeal there to go back and watch it again to try and piece it together a bit more.
I did, you know, just enjoy it on a mostly on an aesthetic level. I thought the animation was good and there were some great set pieces. I guess I didn't have too much of an emotional involvement in the characters, which is a big one for me, I think. And you're probably going to notice that about me throughout this podcast.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm kind of similar as well. Like, you know, I am always left a little bit cold by Akira in some way, because I said my only criticism of the film is that I wouldn't even mind if the plot was gonzo like it is. I'm fine with that. I just wish that they'd spent a bit more time establishing the emotional connection between Tetsuo and Kaneda. But the flip side is that I understand that's probably not what they wanted to do with the film, which is fine. You know, whatever they wanted to make like an exciting action science fiction film set in a cool city, and that's kind of what we did, and that's kind of what it is. I guess we'll rank the anime films that we've seen so far, which there's only 2 of them.
Well, 3 if we count in Conqueror of Shambhala.
Oh yeah, Conqueror of Shambhala. Yeah, I keep forgetting we did Conqueror of Shambhala. Yeah. So out of the 3 anime films that we've seen so far, we're going to rank them separately to the TV series. Just because I don't think it's fair comparing the TV show to movies. So, okay, so let's do it then. So, your least favourite movie we've seen so far?
I feel like I have to apologise for my trashy opinions.
Oh no, don't do it. Don't put Conqueror of Shambhala ahead of Akira.
I felt more emotional connection with Conqueror of Shambhala. I think it's probably a way less good film, but I mean, it's not really fair because I already had the emotional connection with it, but...
So you're putting Akira at number 3?
I'm putting Akira at number 3, I'm sorry.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, bearing in mind, this is not a quality ranking. This is just a personal preference.
Personal preference, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my number 3 is going to be Full Metal Alchemist: The Conqueror of Shambhala.
Which is fair.
Okay, number 2?
Number 2, Conqueror of Shambhala for me.
Okay, my number 2 is going to be One Piece, Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island.
Okay, so you have the good you have the good opinions.
Yes, Baron Omatsuri is very good. I like it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then number 1?
So I would put One Piece. Baron Omatsuri.
From the Secret Island.
I'm sorry.
So fine. So my number 1 so far would be Akira. I've explained at length. I feel like I've kind of taken over this episode a bit, talking about my appreciation of the film. But yeah, Akira's my number 1. Who knows what other kind of controversial opinions we can spout. I think this has been a good one because this feels like a bit of a divergent one. Normally we're kind of in agreement about a lot of the TV shows, but I think the films might differ.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's purely... There's no accounting for taste, like, yes. and I think that's, just a thing that we have to deal with here.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. All right, so for the next episode of Where There's a Weave, There's a Way, we're going to go back to our familiar hunting ground of TV shows. We're going to explore the highly popular Demon Slayer, the biggest property in anime and manga at the moment. It only lays claim to being the highest selling manga series of last year. It also lays claim of being the highest, the film spin-off of the TV anime is also the highest grossing film of 2020, not just in Japan but worldwide. It's the highest grossing film. I cannot emphasize that enough. Only in the year of our Lord 2020 could something like that possibly happen. So next time we're going to talk about the TV show, and then we will probably do a follow-up episode in which we see the movie, because the cinemas are due to reopen soon in the UK, and one of the first films being released in UK cinemas is going to be the Demon Slayer film. Night Train, Demon Train, it's got a train, Mugen Train, I don't know what it's called, it's got a train in the title. I assume they got a train at some point.
Oh, okay. I like trains.
I like trains. So hopefully it's Demon Slayer, Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, I'd be here for that.
Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of Where There's a Weeb, There's a Way. If you liked the show, make sure to like, rate and subscribe to us. You can follow us on Twitter @ThereWeeb, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time.